people are facing more than 100 charges in a major credit fraud scheme. Police are also offering a warning about synthetic identity theft.
If you have a credit card, you are one stolen code away from losing thousands of dollars, and the bank may not give it back. Imagine living a disciplined and deliberate financial life where everything gets done by the book. You keep your balances low, you never miss a payment. Then, without warning, you wake up one morning to find nearly $20,000 vanished from your account in 2 unauthorized transactions. That's the story of Jordan Judge.
Worried at the time because I knew it wasn't my charge.
And what follows is months of investigation, shifting blame, and unanswered questions. This video is what every cardholder needs to hear to avoid making the same mistakes Jordan made. Stay tuned. The man behind the card and why it made no sense. Most fraud victims fit a familiar profile: careless spenders, risky clickers, password recyclers. Jordan was none of those things, and that is exactly what makes this case so unsettling. His financial routine was almost military in its discipline: a steady full-time income, bills settled on time, every time. A single credit card used exclusively for routine, manageable expenses. He didn't gamble, he didn't splurge on luxury items, and he definitely didn't make any late-night impulse purchases that leave a trail of regret in a bank statement. He had a clean, consistent, and responsible financial behavior, the kind that earns you a good credit score and, supposedly, the full protection of your bank's fraud guarantee. Every morning, without fail, Jordan checked his accounts from his phone, not out of anxiety, but out of habit. He knew his numbers, he knew his patterns. If anything looked out of place, he would catch it. And one morning last fall, something was very out of place. 2 charges had appeared on his Scotiabank Visa. The first, nearly $18,000. The second, just over $1,800. Together, they totaled close to $20,000. Gone, seemingly overnight, without a single tap of his card. Here is where the story takes its first strange turn. The larger charge was traced to a British university Jordan had never heard of. The second was directed to a private individual he did not recognize. These were not small, exploratory test charges, the kind fraudsters use to check if a card is active before going big. These looked complete, like decisions had already been made with his money. And yet Jordan did not panic, because he had done everything right. He caught it early. He had fraud protection. This was supposed to be a solved problem. According to the Canadian Bankers Association, Canadians lost over $575 million to fraud in 2023, with credit card fraud accounting for one of the highest categories of financial crime reported that year. And according to the Competition Bureau of Canada, the average reported fraud loss per victim has been climbing year over year, with many cases going unreported entirely because victims assume the bank will handle it. That assumption that the system works is exactly what Jordan carried into his first phone call with the bank. He dialed the number on the back of his card, confirmed his identity, and laid out the facts clearly. He had not traveled, had not made these purchases, and did not recognize either merchant. He expected what most cardholders expect: a temporary credit, an investigation, a new card. He had been through something like this before, years earlier, with a much smaller amount. It had been resolved quickly and quietly. So why would this be any different? That question would take weeks to answer. And when the answer finally came, it would not be the one he was waiting for. The bank was about to tell Jordan that the evidence pointed to him, not to a fraudster. And the only proof they would offer was 4 digits sent to his phone. The text message that changed everything, a 4-digit code. That is all it took to unravel months of trust in his bank. When Jordan first called his bank to report the fraudulent charges, everything felt procedural. The representative walked him through the steps. He confirmed his identity. He explained the situation calmly and clearly. The bank told him the charges would be reviewed, that he should monitor his account, and that he should respond to any messages if needed. Then a text message arrived on his phone. It contained a one-time password, an OTP, and the standard warning that accompanies every such message: do not share this code with anyone. Jordan read it. He insists unequivocally that he never shared it, not with a caller, not on a website, not in response to a text. He did not enter it anywhere unfamiliar. He did not click a suspicious link. To him, it felt like just another routine alert, one of dozens that ping a phone on any given day. He moved on. He had no reason not to. But that single text message would soon become the foundation of the bank's entire case against him. When the bank responded to his fraud claim in writing, Their conclusion rested almost entirely on the existence of that code. Their letter stated that the evidence suggested Jordan must have disclosed the password. Must have, not did, not proof shows, no logs were provided, no timestamps, no technical breakdown showing where the code was entered, what device submitted it, or how the transaction was processed on the bank's end. In the bank's framing, the code existed, it was used, and they concluded that Jordan had authorized the transaction. Case closed. This is where the case moves from frustrating to genuinely alarming, because a one-time password is not the ironclad proof banks often present it as. According to Verizon's 2023 Data Breach Investigations Report, over 74% of all data breaches involve a human element, including social engineering, phishing, and credential interception, methods specifically designed to capture authentication codes without the victim ever knowingly handing them over. Techniques like SIM swapping, SS7 protocol exploitation, and real-time phishing proxies can intercept an OTP the moment it is sent before the recipient even reads it. The victim sees the message, the fraudster uses the code, and the bank's system records an authorized entry. A cybersecurity expert who reviewed Jordan's case made this point directly. The bank, he noted, had provided no evidence, no logs, no timestamped sequence of events to show how the code was actually used, only that it was. The bank's counter-argument was that one-time passwords have a strong track record in preventing fraud. That may be true in aggregate. But a strong track record is not the same as an infallible one, and it is certainly not the same as proof of negligence. Jordan was not told how the fraud happened. He was only told that, somehow, it must have been his fault. That distinction matters enormously, especially under Canadian law. What the law actually says, and what the bank left out. The bank said Jordan was responsible. The law tells a very different story. Under the Canadian Bank Act and the Voluntary Code of Practice for Consumer Debit Card Services, a cardholder's maximum liability for unauthorized transactions is capped at $50, unless the bank can demonstrate that the customer was grossly negligent. That is the legal threshold. That is a significant legal standard, and it is not met simply by pointing to the existence of a one-time password. A lawyer and consumer advocate who reviewed Jordan's case put it plainly. The bank needed to show actual evidence of negligence, not just assert it. The letter Jordan received did neither. It used words like suggests and evidence without attaching anything concrete to either term. According to the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada, in 2022 to 2023, the agency handled over 9,000 consumer complaints related to banking products and services, with disputed transactions and fraud resolution among the most common grievances filed. Many of those cases involved customers who felt the burden of proof had been quietly shifted onto them without explanation, without documentation, and without recourse clearly spelled out. That is precisely what happened to Jordan. The bank's position transformed what should have been a fraud investigation into an authorization question. And once a transaction is framed as authorized, the customer is no longer a victim. They become the explanation. This reframing is subtle, but its consequences are not. Jordan was not told he was being held liable because of a specific action he took. He was told the system recorded an entry and that the entry was sufficient, no further evidence required. When a bank can declare liability without producing a log, a timestamp, or a transaction trail, and face no immediate legal obligation to do so, the consumer is left holding the debt and the silence. The merchant nobody called. While Jordan waited for answers, the bank was supposed to be investigating. What that investigation actually looked like is where the story takes its most damaging turn. The larger of the two fraudulent charges, nearly $18,000, was traced to a British university, a real institution, one with an administrative office, a finance department, and staff capable of answering a phone. In any thorough fraud investigation, contacting the merchant is not optional. It is the first call you make. You verify whether the transaction was legitimate, whether the account it was tied to matches the cardholder's profile, and whether anything about the payment raised flags on their end. The bank never made that call. It was only after CBC's Go Public team contacted the university directly that the $18,000 charge was finally reversed. Not because the bank completed its investigation, not because new evidence surfaced internally, but because an external media inquiry prompted action that a formal fraud dispute had not. That sequence of events is worth sitting with. A journalist achieved in one outreach what a weeks-long banking investigation did not. According to the American Bankers Association's 2023 Deposit Account Fraud Survey, banks in North America collectively lost an estimated $25.9 billion to fraud in 2023, yet internal investigation processes remain inconsistently applied, with merchant verification frequently absent from dispute workflows. When merchants are not contacted, critical context disappears. Whether the transaction matched a real enrollment, whether the billing details aligned, and whether the payment processor flagged anything unusual. In Jordan's case, the university's records could have resolved the dispute in days. Instead, the charge sat unresolved for weeks, accruing interest, while Jordan monitored an account he could not fully trust. This is the part of fraud protection that rarely appears in the brochure. Banks promise investigation, but investigation without merchant contact is not investigation. And if a journalist can reverse an $18,000 charge with a single phone call, what exactly was the bank doing for all those weeks? Interest doesn't wait for justice. While the investigation dragged on, the clock was running, and it was running against Jordan. This is the part of fraud disputes that rarely makes it into the conversation about consumer protection. Everyone focuses on whether the charges get reversed. Far fewer people talk about what happens to your finances in the weeks, sometimes months, between the fraud occurring and the resolution arriving. For Jordan, that gap was long enough to cause real damage. He continued paying his other bills on time throughout the dispute. His financial discipline did not waver, but the fraudulent charges sat on his account, and interest does not pause for an open investigation. Every day that passed without resolution was another day the balance grew without his consent. This is one of the most quietly devastating aspects of credit card fraud disputes. The financial system continues moving forward on its normal schedule while your case sits in a queue. Minimum payments come due, interest compounds, credit utilization ratios shift, and in some cases, credit scores begin to reflect a balance the cardholder never created. According to the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada, Canadians collectively paid an estimated $1.3 billion in unnecessary interest and fees in 2022, a portion of which stemmed directly from disputed and unresolved fraudulent transactions left on accounts during investigation periods. The bank eventually reimbursed the smaller charge, just over $1,800, along with the interest that had accumulated on it. But the timing was telling. That reimbursement came only after CBC's Go Public team began making inquiries. As a response to external pressure, the resolution happened, but it required a media intervention to trigger what the dispute process should have delivered on its own. When a bank only acts after a camera shows up, it stops being a protection system and starts being a performance. The warning signs that were there, all along hindsight, is the cruelest teacher. Looking back at Jordan's case, the red flags were present. They were just disguised as normal. The first flag was the nature of the charges themselves. Nearly $18,000 sent to a British university and over $1,800 directed to a private individual. Two transactions with no logical connection to Jordan's spending history. Banks have algorithms specifically designed to detect exactly this kind of anomaly. Large international charges that fall completely outside a cardholder's established pattern. The fact that both transactions cleared without a direct confirmation call to Jordan is a failure that should never have been possible. The second flag was the one-time password. Jordan received it without initiating any transaction. That is the detail most people miss. An OTP arriving unsolicited when you have not just attempted a purchase, an account change, or a login is not a routine alert. It is a signal that someone else is attempting to move through your account's authentication layer. Receiving a code you did not request means someone is on the other side of that request. The third flag was the merchant itself. A British university processing a payment of nearly $18,000 through a personal Visa card is not a typical transaction profile. Universities of that size operate through institutional billing systems. A charge of that magnitude through a consumer credit card should have triggered an automatic review, not sailed through unquestioned. According to the Federal Trade Commission's Consumer Sentinel Network Data Book 2023, credit card fraud was the most reported type of identity theft in 2023, accounting for over 416,000 reports, with a significant portion involving transactions that bypassed standard velocity and pattern detection checks entirely. The painful truth is that Jordan did not miss these flags because he was careless. He missed them because the system that was supposed to catch them first, the bank's own fraud detection infrastructure, let them through without a single friction. The most dangerous fraud is not the kind that looks suspicious. It is the kind that the system waves through without blinking and then turns around and asks you to explain. What to do before you become the next Jordan. Most people think fraud preparation means setting up alerts. It doesn't. Alerts tell you what already happened. Real protection is what you put in place before a fraudster ever finds your account. The first thing to understand is your bank's specific fraud liability policy, not the general promise on their website, but the exact written terms governing unauthorized transactions on your card type. Call your bank and ask them to direct you to the document. Search your bank name card member agreement unauthorized transaction liability and download the current version. Read the section on gross negligence specifically. Know exactly what standard they would apply to hold you responsible before it ever becomes relevant. The second layer of protection is transaction velocity controls. Most cardholders do not know these exist. Many banks allow you to set hard limits on international transactions, single transaction maximums, and merchant category restrictions directly through their app or by calling the fraud prevention line. Search your bank name transaction controls international spending limit to find the exact setting. A cap on international transactions would have stopped Jordan's $18,000 charge before it was ever processed. The third is OTP awareness. An unsolicited one-time password, one that arrives when you have not initiated any action, should be treated as an active intrusion attempt, not a routine notification. The correct response is to immediately call the fraud line on the back of your card, not the number in any text message, and report that an unauthorized authentication attempt is in progress. Search your bank name report, unauthorized OTP attempt, to find the specific fraud reporting pathway. According to the Identity Theft Resource Center's 2023 Annual Data Breach Report, victims who took proactive account monitoring steps reduced their average fraud loss by 68% compared to those who relied solely on bank-initiated detection, a gap that represents thousands of dollars in the average case. The difference between Jordan's outcome and a faster, cleaner resolution is not luck. It's knowing the right process before the crisis, not during it. The bank has a script for when fraud happens to you. The only question is whether you have one too. Jordan got his money back. Eventually, partially through merchant intervention, partially through media pressure, not through the bank's intervention. And somewhere right now, another cardholder is trusting the same system without knowing what Jordan knows. Luckily, you're not that person. Has your bank ever failed you during a fraud dispute? Drop your experience in the comments. Your story could help someone avoid the same nightmare. If this opened your eyes, hit the like button and subscribe. We cover the financial stories banks hope you never find out about.